stop worrying so much about what doesn't work. Just take some time and have a look about what is working, and then try and figure out why. If you can figure out why it does, that change in perspective is often enlightening, and that will often tell you, here's a thing that I can change.
Welcome to the Team Amplifier Podcast. I'm your host, Byron Summerdahl. Here you'll be inspired by industry leaders who build flourishing tech teams. Stay tuned and prepare to be amplified.
3, 2, 1.
Hey everybody, we're here with Dan Hardiker, and Dan is a former child prodigy turned, this is a kind of a rare opportunity for us, a former child prodigy turned tech leader and community builder. Dan, you got to tell us more about this. So tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, so I got my first computer when I was 4, sort of sold my first computer program when I was 8. I've always been into technology, building tech. I grew up in an evangelical church where we had quite a wide community around us. I've come from a large family myself. I've always been around people and have always been inside of communities. And so wherever I've gone through, be it school or be it into the workplace, I find myself building those communities around me, be it around technology. I used to run an organization called Geek Up, which was getting geeks in the early noughties into pubs like my builder and trader friends would go down after work. We've always seen the it crowd style in the basement cellar nerds that were antisocial. It's entirely opposites to what everyone is social, just in different settings. And some people like small groups to be familiar around themselves. Some people like the bigger, larger spaces to be extroverted and loud. But everyone likes human connection. Everyone likes their people, right? And I learned through my teens how to do that in the same way. I had to learn, thanks to my tendencies and my neurodivergence. I was very much analytical about how that happens and how we build human constructs, whereas everyone was learning the opposite. How do you build technical constructs, and how does this world of work? How do you get a thing? They all had to be taught how to be analytical at schools. It came second nature to me. And so applying analytical to the stuff that everyone just learned ephemerally while just playing in the playground, I was already working out how humans make those connections. And, well, what does this mean? And why don't that happen? And why does that person like that thing and not like that thing? And understanding how humans work has always been as interesting to me as how machines or gadgets or technology works. And yeah, that really put the foundations of me to build communities, and ultimately companies and teams are just communities of people trying to get a thing done. And yeah, I'm a community builder.
Awesome. So what was your first computer when you were 4?
Commodore 64.
Mine too.
Hey, Drake. It was...
Okay, wait. What were the games that you had?
Oh, I couldn't remember. There was one that was an astronaut on a moon lander that you had to go off and jump and collect stars on. And I remember typing the game for about 2-3 months because the magazines would send you the codes to type up, and they would be full of bugs.
Yeah.
You had to wait till... So I was like 4 or 5 going through and just typing in code and then it not working and then having to figure it out, changing line by line, and I it was like brute force, reverse engineering of what the programming language was, because they never taught you the programming language. They just said, just type it, makes it work, and you figure out the rest. It really worked really well for people who were of that analytical. They were the people who would pick up a screwdriver, take apart the VCR to find out why it's not working, and then put it back together and have 4 screws left over, but it still works. So yeah. They were the ones that really got it on, whereas it was when the tape drive started to work. That's when it really took off around my friends and other people, because they didn't need to have that skill. They just needed to be able to put the tape in and play the game.
Well, we had cartridges in the back of the Commodore 64, almost like an Atari.
Yeah.
And so we had Pac-Man, and we had some other game on a cartridge. We had the joysticks,
Yeah, we didn't have the joystick. Yeah, so this is going back to like 1984.
Oh yeah,
1980,
yeah.
right. But it all,
Wait, Dan, how old are you?
45 this year.
Okay, so we're almost the same age. So we're basically living the same life across the pond.
That's been said more than once. I think the first best friend I had was when I was 12 with someone across the pond teletyping.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember also getting we're going to really bore everybody if we keep on talking about old tech, but I do remember getting my first modem, 300 baud modem on a Commodore 64, and then, like dialing into a BBS or something. And man, those were the days back when things were hard and you had to work for them.
The days when my telephone bill was, my dad's telephone bill was bigger than our energy bill.
Oh no, my parents wouldn't allow that. I couldn't. I had to dial into the local university and then like do the little code that I found out from somebody older than me that would let me redial to another BBS another place. And so,
I mean, we have to get careful about talking about phreaking and the sorts of things that happened in the 80s that may not have been entirely within the lines.
Yeah, like the string around the quarter that you could put into the phone, into the coin-op phone and pull it back out.
Yeah.
Or the sounds you could play into the receiver, into the microphone side of the receiver and dial. It's just, anyway, it's so much fun. Everything is so like cheap these days. It's just so easy to do everything. It's like nobody has to work for anything.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting conversation, but we'll be down that rabbit hole for an hour.
Yes, exactly. So, Dan, tell me about a book that you've been reading lately. How's that for a segue? Tell me about a book that you've been reading lately that has made an impact on you.
I'd probably be picking up Solve for Happy by Mo Goda. He's chief business officer on the Google X program. That's their moonshot program where they fire teams at things for a while to do skunk work style, can you change the world stuff. And interesting in work, but actually he's got an interesting take on life. I do a lot of psychology and psychotherapy type stuff, and through my coaching it's really interesting talking to people, especially leaders, about happiness and what it means to be happy, and deferring happiness is, I'll be happier when I get more money, or I'll be happier when I'm leading a team, or I'll be happier when I have children, or I'll be happier when I'm able to move out of here, or I'll be happier when I'm more independent, or I'll be happier when. And his take on happiness is really around happiness versus sadness, and how to be happy in times where really surrounded by darkness. For example, he lost his young son during a routine operation, and your world just falls apart, right? I have quite a bit of empathy for that because my brother-in-law passed away this morning, which is a terribly sad thing. And
I'm very sorry for your loss.
Thank you. But in these moments of despair, and you do feel the loss, you feel it deeply and emotively, you can still identify happiness. Things that make you happy are still around, and being able to grasp onto the rich tapestry, because life today isn't happy or sad. It's a mixture of everything. It always is. And how to allow yourself to be happy when there's an expectation of sadness, and allowing yourself to be sad even though there's an expectation of happiness. Well, it's a really interesting concept, because that it's really empowering to allow yourself to be at your birthday party, and yet the person you want there most in the world isn't, and therefore you feel sad. And you're like, but I should be happy. It's my birthday. Or you're at a funeral and you see, it brings family together, right? So you're at the wake and you see someone who you've not seen in 15 years, and you're like, I want to catch up with you and hear all about the great stuff you've been doing, but it feels inappropriate. Because we're supposed to be sad. We're supposed to be sad at this point. It's like, no, actually, no, you're not. You're allowed to be simultaneously sad and happy. If you want a film that explores this really well, that's Inside Out. Inside Out 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Well, talking about the complexity of emotions through the journey of a child who goes through adolescence, as to understanding how actually sad memories can become happy, a mixture, and nothing is as binary as it is. Solve for Happy. It's a great book that helps anyone who wants a unique perspective on grappling with happiness and unhappiness in an unchanging world.
I love that. I'm going to read it. It's on my list right now. Yeah. There's something that I'm expecting to find in that book which is wrestling with the difference between happiness and contentment, or the difference between happiness and flourishing, or sometimes how you have to wait. Your happiness has to be delayed in order to flourish. It's kind of like the valley before the peak, or the calm before the storm. You kind of have to accept that sometimes happiness is not the real goal.
Yeah, and I've not got to that part yet. It's very practical as a book. It talks about a ton of things that prevent you from being happy, some misconceptions, things like your happiness is not dependent on others, and control, this illusion that we have more control than we do, the illusion of time, of passing the same, and your boredom is not the same as someone else's. So time can pass really slowly for you while quickly for others. This sense of self. And there's a whole ton of stuff in it. It's very quite practical and pragmatic. But what you're saying is absolutely true. In another realm of understanding about happiness, one thing that people miss often is that happiness isn't the absence of sadness. That's contentment. And actually, contentment should be all right. So I tend to help people draw a graph over time as to where they feel happy, with 0 being neutral. I don't feel happy, I don't feel sad, I just feel content. And where does that go? Up and down. These things happened today, yesterday, etc. And these make me happy, these make me sad, these make me... anger and frustration you can turn into negative and positive emotions, right? Draw that over, and then you create a median line. Where is your median line? Is it at 0? It's unlikely to be so. For me, I aim for +1. I don't particularly want to be ecstatic about everything, but I want to feel good about most things. So how do I keep myself at a median line of +1? And I engineer my life somewhat to do so. I make sure I have foods in, which I enjoy, in case I need to pick me up. I make sure that I manage my cash flow so I don't have stress towards the end of the month wondering how am I going to pay my bills. There's a lot of stuff we can do to be kind to our future selves. And doing so allows you to influence your own happiness, because happiness often is a lack of choice. You're at this point in your life, what can you do today? You've either run yourself out of time, or you've run yourself out of a resource. So be a bit more protective over the resources. Give yourself some options, and it'll allow you to be happy when you need to be.
Yeah.
I think a podcast on happiness.
Yeah. Well, I think I love this topic. I could continue talking about this. Peace has a big place in there too. Peace has a lot to do with contentment. I think if you can, peace is what you're looking for when you take a deep breath in the middle of an anxious moment. Like, and it kind of brings peace in a way. But I think what I love about my faith, this is not a podcast about faith or anything, but one thing that I love about my faith is that it tends to, especially when I'm in my right mind, it tends to bring a peace that doesn't really make sense. Like, it doesn't make sense that I should be having peace in this moment. It could be a storm going around me. Because I trust something bigger than me, I feel peace. That leads to contentment and happiness, for me at least. And I don't know, it's not supposed to be a religious podcast, but
that's fine. I mean, there's spirituality, right? But it actually gets a bit deeper than that, I find. Well, I'm a spiritual person, but I don't necessarily attach that. I see that at the surface level, and even attaches to the topic of what we're talking about is the why, not the what and the how. Because that's what you've got with the what and the how through religion and that support. But peace, I find, comes from the absence of two things. One is expectation, the second is dependence. You lose peace when there are things expected of you. You have to deliver a deadline, and there's pressure coming from that. Or there is a thing that has to be done in a certain time, in a certain place. Or there's an expectation of you to behave in a certain way. And so you're having to manage your brain to do these things, either to achieve a thing or do a thing or stand up and listen, or you can't relax. You can't just relax. And then the dependence is someone else putting those things on you. I have to take the daughter out to this thing this afternoon, or maybe I have to go off and take the bins out, or none of these things are in my control. They're taking from me, and I can't find peace when there's this expectation of taking. And especially when cast your cares upon me, that sort of thing that you get in the Christian church, for example.
Yeah.
And that idea of externalizing all of these things that are taking from you, and you're left with no expectation. And finding that in you, and finding that there is nothing more to do. Being able to go into a situation where your house is on fire, and now you've called the fire brigade, you've got everyone out, everyone's safe, there's an exclusion zone around it in case it catches fire, you have no more access to water or fire mitigation controls within you. All there is to do is wait, and it will come or it won't come. It will be. You find peace in that moment. You find happiness in that moment of, at least I've got what I've left. And you can do nothing else other than accept the situation for what it is and where you are. And say, absolutely. All of these things wrap up into your mental health of how it feels to get from day to day. And it's why on the Teamwork podcast, I pick up on something that's mostly related to happiness. Because that ultimately, an unhappy individual leads to an unhappy team. I'm a strong believer in we can't be happy unless we're all happy. And by happy, I mean not unhappy and not in pain.
Yeah. So, Dan, it's confession time. So let's go back to your roots. You've done some bad things, Dan. So haven't we all? So step into my confession booth. Tell me, it's just you and me. Nobody else is here. Actually, I hope lots of people are here, but let's just pretend like it's you and me. So what's an embarrassing mistake that you've made as a tech leader?
Well, let's go back to 2006. Pizza servers racked and stacked and in data centers. And there's been one new 42 of them. Well, 40 with the power supply rack. We used to have 2 power supplies to each of these to pull from, one on the UPS side and one on the grid side in case the grid went down. Great. So, unfortunately, the kettle leaves for the kettle. Literally, British people, right, can't live without tea. Kettle literally broken. So sent, and early that day, the power supply, one of the power supplies in the rack had failed for one of the servers. So we can just go and grab that cable, right? And we'll just pull that cable, use that instead. Just go and grab it. I decided to go and do that, being the responsible team lead that I was at the time. Pulled it from the live side, not the dead side, taking the server out, all in aid of a cup of tea. Because we were supposed to power the server down and then, because you can't hot swap the PSU at that point, but the paid PSU fail over. And took a customer out. Whoops.
The servers can burn the whole thing. Just let it burn. As long as we have our tea, we are fine.
The thing I ended up learning from that was because it was nice that there had been a power outage that day, and the which is happened to be why the PSU popped, because it had spiked on the grid side, and it blown. It just taken one of them out, unfortunately. The customers had no idea, because the UPSs ran fine for the 3 hours they needed to, and they would have done 6, in order to keep delivering the service they were delivering. And so the customers would be none the wiser. However, the hosting facility had put out a sorry for the outage message. Could have entirely said, not our fault. There's a power outage externally, in fact, it failed. We decided not to. We decided to own up to the customer we impacted.
Did you tell them it was for tea?
Yes, absolutely. We told them everything. Why not at this point? Let's go off, be honest. And the reason that we did was we wanted them to but trust us if we ever told them that it had gone down for reasons that weren't our fault. Because, of course, we would tell you. Why would we not tell you the truth when we told you it before? And being able to stand behind that was a reasonably good lesson. And there were cases in the future where we had to externalize and say, this wasn't our fault. We're going to do what we can to resolve this, but yeah, we're not lying to you. Trust us.
Okay. I can respect that.
We've done this. And yes, I still did get my tea.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. There's a good lesson in there. If you can be trusted with the small things, then you can also be trusted with the big things.
It also led the culture. One thing I was very acutely aware of is sins of the father. And when you see how your values are all great and fun and fine when you write them down on a piece of paper, but your culture is not your values. It's not whatever your senior leadership teams say. It's what they do. The test of a man is not when he is walking around the field and the sun is shining. The test is when you've got your back up against the wall and the wolf's at your throat, and what do you do then? What do you do when you're out of options? And that tests your principles.
That's when your values actually shine.
It's fine to say, let's give to people who need stuff when it costs you nothing. It's when it costs you something that you then find out who your friends are. You find out who people really are when they are poorer because of making you richer. And that's the same for choosing not to go to a gig because I came to console you because you've had a death in the family. Or maybe it's I expended my physical energy to help you move house. Or maybe it's I don't really like doing that thing, but you really wanted to do that thing, so I enabled you to do that thing by giving something. There's a lot to be said for leaders that lead like they say they should and not give lip services to how they want the rest of the team to work. And so, yeah, truthfulness and honesty and integrity, those things people really value. They value people they can trust. And in a services-based company, that's really important that you trust that the people you're working with have got those qualities, right? So, yeah, demonstrate them, lead them, be them.
Yeah, so we are talking about that very thing, actually, today. We're talking about building autonomy without building anarchy, and which sometimes they can kind of be at opposite ends of the pole or at opposite poles. And so I want to first unpack some of this stuff. So let's define what is autonomy.
So autonomy, if we say, when we talk about autonomy, what sort of autonomy are we talking about? Because I don't think we're talking about autonomous vehicles, for example.
No.
I think in this term, when you're talking about team dynamics, it usually boils down to the influence from Dan Pink and others, but talking about, say, drive, which describes what gives people motivation in knowledge work, and it's mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And when we talk about autonomy, we're also talking about teams in the same way we talk about autonomous microservices, of why do we break the monolith up? And we talk about loosely coupled but strongly cohesive elements. We talk about them having inputs and outputs and side effects on other things in the network. And if you model this inside of microservices, you can easily model this inside of, let me call it micro teams. And that's how your organization works, is that you've got accounting that has to work with product, that also has to work with marketing, that also has to work with sales, that also works from product into engineering and delivery and operations. And all of these create work for others, right? And but they also have their own inputs, outputs, and side effects. And the result of all of this is company making money, because that's what allows them to pay you money, which allows the circle to go round again for another month. In this context, autonomy is about the independence, the ability to be self-directed and to be able to operate independently of the center to make decisions that matter and don't matter simultaneously. However, I find it interesting when talking to teams, and I ask them, well, how do you make sure you have autonomy and not anarchy? And now anarchy is usually seen as a bad thing, and almost universally in this context it is too. Anarchists from anarchy and anarchist intent from a governmental system in a hippie world, there's places where anarchy actually works reasonably well if it has a different set of checks and balances. Inside an organization, it almost never, and I would arguably for the definition of usefulness, never makes sense in this sort of world. Because it is the absence of governance. It's the absence of any form of control structure that constrains what you can and can't do. Almost like the absence of rules. And so, while you might have autonomous teams, if you have anarchist ones, then those are belligerently going after things without fear of consequence and without care of impact. And those two things lead to something called the tragedy of the commons. It's a theory that says that any resource pool, and money and team and effort, and all these things exist as resources like we were talking about before, those resource pools will be exhausted due to what looks like selfishness. And that selfishness might not be intentional, but you end up with them draining what is available to the organization because they're not trying to work together. Now, if I talk to any technical leader, I don't think any of them would want their autonomous teams not to work together. And so where does that imperative to work together come from? And that comes from the whole concept of high-performing teams, as to what does a high-performing network of teams actually look like and do. And if you've not designed for your system that you're wanting to be autonomous, not to become anarchists, it will almost certainly drift towards that direction, unless you end up putting in control frameworks that look a lot like architectural design decisions and having control boards and design systems in place where your teams have to come together to agree, well, which libraries do we support? Well, how do we do this? And do we use TypeScript in the front end? And is there a certain version of React? And all of these create decisions, and then you end up capturing those, and all of a sudden you've got these rules, right? That autonomous teams become a lot less autonomous and independent because you're creating this synchronous blocking system that means that we've got a governance framework that comes from the need to create harmony and cooperation between these teams. And you end up building a command and control system in a place where you wanted servant leadership. You have these competing theories going in. And so I do quite a bit of helping technical leaders working on not the what or even the how, because those things are usually readily available to pretty much every technical leader going, either because they are obvious and they're intuitively known, or they've been modeled and seen by leaders they've seen before. The thing that's almost always missed, though, is the why. Why did that thing happen? Why did you go and pick that language up? Why did you not talk to that person over there? Oh, I didn't know that they were working up. Why didn't you know that? I didn't know. I didn't expect it to, or I didn't think that would be the results, or they tend to be the what. That's the what of the retrospective, right? This is the what. But the why. Why weren't you aware? People rarely ask that question. People rarely dig down a bit deeper into the understanding of why aren't these teams trying to work together? And almost always the result of that tends to be motivation. And by motivation, I mean things like KPIs, or maybe it's down to the other goal setting or reason. There's no measurement around how much did you help someone else. Very rarely do I see assists being measured in terms of performance reporting. How much did you help someone else achieve their goals? How much are you aware of what your wider teams are doing this sprint and what we're trying to achieve? And at what point could you have stepped in to help them achieve their goal at the expense of you achieving less of yours, but maybe you'd have got 20% less in your thing, but got them 80% further along the way. If you take your hat off as the engineer or even the team lead, you're now the engineering manager. If you look at the CTO level, and I'm sitting here going, would I want this team to do 20% less, for that team to do 80% more? Had that decision been at that? Of course, absolutely. Why wasn't that a factor in any of this decision making? And the answer usually is that's really hard to do. It's like, yes, it's really hard to do. It's really, really hard to do if you don't start collecting the information, start sharing it. And that lack of awareness of what's going on really does drive anarchist teams that are all off doing their own thing.
Well, it's such a noble pursuit, though, for tech leaders to want to build autonomy in their teams.
Yeah.
But what I find is that if they don't provide a team with a unified motivation, then the team will come up with their own motivations, and it might be competing. They might be competing with each other because I am motivated by my desire to grow my career. I am motivated by my desire to earn more money. I want to find another job. I want to impress my boss, and I don't care about those other things. Or I'm trying to date that girl over there. And like, everybody's motivations are completely different. And those are some maybe realistic motivations, but maybe they're a little bit made up. But the point there is, if I as a tech leader don't provide some unified goals, like you said, like KPIs, goals, OKRs, if I don't try to provide people a direction to go in, they will go in every direction, and it will be complete anarchy.
I completely agree. It's interesting that those are the two levels that you describe them as, because one of them is what's much closer to biases. So let's say you've got someone who's a senior engineer, and wanted to become staff, or junior, wanted to become standards, or someone who's heard about a new funky object-based database or vector database running an LLM at conference. All of these get pulled in as biases when they do decision-making. They're like, which language should we use? Which framework? Oh, I want to use this shiny thing. The goal of the leadership is to first surface those biases and also recognize that those are valid. It is reasonable for you to want to go and learn more about a piece of technology that might
right.
But it is not reasonable for you to put that in our core pipeline tomorrow. It is reasonable for you want to see advancement in your career, for you to want to take that next step, for you want to earn some more money because you know you want to grow a family, and therefore you need both stability to increase in your income and the dollar value of that income to increase too. They are all perfectly reasonable, but they shouldn't be motivations for making a decision. They should just be biases that we're able to call out. And if you take if you want to go slightly political, and I will back away from this very quickly after, you hear a lot about bro culture, right? And DEI is taking away stuff from white male, and fine, we're used to privilege, and equality when you're used to privilege feels like oppression. I get that, and that's entirely correct. But also that feeling of that impression is still valid. And so you have to validate that feeling and then say, yeah, but that's okay. In the same way that when you've got a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, and it's a 4-year-old's birthday, the 2-year-old is upset that they have no presents. It's like, yeah, that upset feeling is still valid, but you have to remind them that it's inappropriate. You don't get a present. And so enabling people to have these conversations of, yeah, but I want more money because I want a baby. It's like, yeah, but just wanting that doesn't make it. So I mean, it's perfectly valid to want those things. But that doesn't mean that we now go off and do this thing to enable that, because that's not part of the decision-making framework. And so being able to separate that out, understanding the motivations behind things and why this is the right thing to do, and say, this is what we should do. And it might be that actually this isn't the organization for you because we don't have the opportunities that present or that make sense for this business to support your growth in that direction. Right. If I've got 5 junior developers, and I've only got space in my team for 2 standard developers, come 2 years, I have to have a path for them to be able to move out of my organization. And that path is for them to be able to do so, but for me, as a technical leader, to be able to replace them with new juniors or create a situation where they can become standard developers. It is both unfair of me to expect them to develop into a position where I can't support their future and not tell them that's coming. Which is why you see people, especially in the early stages of careers, jump around between 1.5 to 2 years, but it's a requirement on me to make sure my organization can support them leaving as much as them actually leaving. And you end up in situations where you build a really good workplace where they stick around for 3 years, not the 2. And they actually are suffering in their career because they're, at least on CV, they are seen as a junior developer when really they haven't, because they love your company and you create an environment that they can't get elsewhere. So come on, everyone else, get better. I'd love for there to be more opportunities for my staff to move into organizations that are just as good, because I can't keep every developer I develop into something great. I mean, it's a triangle structure. It's always a triangle. If it's not a triangle, it's flatter. And so, being aware.
So what does autonomy have to do with human flourishing?
It fits into that statement I was talking about, building those high performance teams. And it's finding those factors where things matter. So we talked about just now about those biases that we have and those things that drive us individually and how they attach to things that should drive our teams and our businesses. Autonomy is all about creating structures in that organization where those decisions can be made without having to be controlled centrally. You basically want to rig the game for success as a leader, not have to play on the pitch. And you're wanting those players on the pitch to make the right decisions at the right times for the right reasons, and not be carrying in their baggage of perhaps wanting to be the superstar, the one that scores the goals and the most points. All of those counter incentives, you're wanting to watch out for those happening and measure against those. And that is the sort of governance that supports independent thinking and independent growth. In the same way, if you think about how teachers teach, teachers strive not to give you the answer. In my foreign language lessons, never have I ever been told what the French word for something is. Thrown in the dictionary and told how to look it up. Because it's not their job to teach me. Their job is to create an environment within which I can learn. Everything I need to do it, and then allow me to go and do it. How I go and look that up in the dictionary is up to me, and whether I just look up that or start looking up curse and naughty words, well, that's entirely up to me. However, they set the rules of the game. They set the objectives. The goal here is get a high grade. That's a high score. For your engineering team, it's going to be deliver on these features or deliver on this output. How you get there and how you build your structure, you should be able to give your teams independence to be able to do so and share the workings. Share what works, share what doesn't. Because if it's working really well, why isn't everyone doing this? If it didn't work for you, why is everyone else working with it? How is this work? That sort of community is really important. And the thing that builds that more than anything is driving empathy. Driving rig.
I think, I want to say I have a different take, but I think it's the exact same thing, but just a different way to think about it. I go back to what we were talking about just a minute ago with the opposition or the polar opposite feel of like autonomy versus anarchy. And I liked how you said anarchy is the absence of governance. Autonomy is maybe the absence of control, of external control. You're able to act on your own energy, on your own decisions. You're able to make decisions that impact yourself, and you don't have to do exactly what you're told. You know, instead of painting by numbers, you're now able to paint freely. But the difference, and I think maybe what we want is something that's kind of in between, where you're not completely independent, you're not completely autonomous, going your own direction, and you're not completely without governance. You are maybe, and I've heard it described as guardrails. Yeah. Like you're able to go down a road that maybe if you veer off to the left or the right, you could be in grave peril. You could be careening down a cliff, or you could be running into the wall over on the other side. But a road like that often has these metal guardrails that will prevent you from doing something that you shouldn't do, doing something dangerous.
Yeah, so there's two different things, right? There is enabling, so we talk about acceptable failure, right? And that's where guardrails really come in. And guardrails are there to make sure failure is not fatal. And that's why you have guardrails against going off a cliff.
Or that failure doesn't take out the company.
Yeah, and that's a similar fatality, right? Whether it be the individual, we have to accept that nothing is perfect, and we're at risk of going down another conversation about computers not being fallible, whereas we allow humans to be fallible, cars and stuff like that, the trolley problem. That aside, but the innateness of it is that we forget that fallibility and risk as a whole is not binary. It is not about failure or success. It's degrees. And it's how much successful were you. If you think about delivery, it's not did we meet everything we've done this sprint, but a percentage of what we got done. Or did we make the right choices at the right time is what we should be talking about. So the guardrails stop fatality. We are still successful within a cone. Interestingly, what you're describing, though, when it comes to proper autonomy, is that the person describing the autonomy, the leader in this, has no control over the decision itself. They have control over the decision-making framework. Not did you make the right decision, but did you go through the right process in order to make that decision? That's the scrutiny that you should be sitting in when you have an autonomous team. Were you aware of the right factors that when you decided to create yet another key value store? It's like, well, did you not look to see what other ones there were? Because that seems like a stupid thing to have done. And the decision itself is never stupid. But the way in which you came to that decision and the things that you elected not to do, or under a high-pressure environment, the server's off, or the system is down, and you panic and you do something that you shouldn't. You decide to put all the customer's personal information into a hard drive in your bag and carry it home, and then you get mugs and say, well, that was just... There's a whole set of consequential decisions made that two things failed there. One, you weren't thinking about all the right things and applying the decision-making framework correctly, or the decision-making framework failed you. And secondly, the system allowed you to do those things. The system should never have allowed to. There shouldn't have been a possibility for me to get the hard drive into my damn backpack. I shouldn't have been allowed to be in that situation. The question is, the baby on the road with a knife. What happened? It's like, how on earth did the baby get a knife? Let's talk about that. The fact this situation even exists for us to talk about is a systemic failure, and this is where all of that fits in. And so guiding autonomy, it requires rules, because without those rules, without the framework within which to thrive, and that framework has to be intentionally created, because if you allow it to randomly and spontaneously be created, there's all sorts of hellish failures that come from that, because you're now dependent on individuals. It's like writing no documentation at all for anything in your organization. Just like an organization interestingly works. And it's really, really interesting when I ask people, how do you work? And they'll start to say, oh, well, we follow Scrum, and we have no, that's the methodology that you use. But how do you work? It's like, oh, well, we have stand-ups in the morning, and no, that's when you do your work. How? How do you get work? Where do your work come from? Who does the work that you do impact? How, if you didn't deliver today, if you didn't do your thing today, my brother-in-law, maybe that means that I have to rush away, and who is my absence going to impact this afternoon? And how can the organization respond and react to that in order to be able to support me in being where I need to be? That is something that leaders rarely get to accidentally. And when they're there intentionally, create a self-sustaining, with a large level of trust, large levels of psychological safety, and teams that people fight to succeed and stay with. And at that point, you have an autonomous team that cares, deeply cares, not just about its individuals, but its impact on others, because that scales. And as you have a team that cares about others, you have a team that works and then says, hey, how can we make your lives better?
Dan, that sounds just so nice. Why wouldn't any tech leader want that? Why don't more tech leaders try to build autonomy in their organizations?
For the very same reasons why a lot of and it's not even technical leaders, but leaders as a whole do things like return to the office. Because people will be better. People in the office will obviously work better together and be more performant. It's all rubbish. That's not true. Presenteeism doesn't confer productivity. Never has, never will. In fact, there's a large degree of variance between the types of work and the types of places where people can perform their best work. For example, trying to do a project kickoff or run a work social, all remotely, sucked. We all lived through COVID. We know what they're like. And I am very happy that I am not having any more Friday night drinks over Zoom. They were terrible. But equally, I have sat in many an office where I've been trying to write reports with people chatting all around me and having to zone out. I usually have to drown out with headphones, something else to white noise the background in order to get deep work done. Recognition of the variance of work. And if I'm told that I have to be in the office on a Tuesday and a Wednesday, how do I make sure that I don't have to do deep work on those days? Life doesn't happen in that sort of way. And the thing that we've sacrificed with RTOs is that autonomy to be able to make the choice to be where's best for me to get the most work done. And that usually comes from trust. And so you remove that, you're saying you don't trust me.
Right.
All the stereotypical arguments is people are at home in their pajamas, working from the couch as if they're lazy. They don't want to work. If you don't have a motivated team that want to deliver work, know how they can work and where they can best work, if you can't get them into that position, you need to fix your leadership style. Because you won't get an autonomous team until you fix that part of your organization first. Because once you have a team that's trying to deliver successfully, you can then just enable them by giving them the rule set, giving them a structure in order to be successful. And this is why autonomy is one of the three of mastery, autonomy, and purpose. That autonomy allows them to drive. And that autonomy is actually the hardest to do for the leader, not for the team. Once you've given autonomy, the team will naturally drift towards anarchy. And that's the responsibility and the maturity of the leader to stop that happening. And then all you're here to do is create cohesion and communication. That's it. So all you have to do as an engineering manager, tie them together, watch out, look ahead, and then your responsibility, the further up you go, is to look the further out of the team. By the time you're at the CTO level, you're just looking at the rest of the organization. You're not really a member of engineering at that point. You're a member of the executive team supporting the entire organization and representing engineering in it. Your VP of engineering or your head of engineering, they're the ones that are, hey, shall we move more to the cloud and the strategic type stuff? And then down from there is, how do we work better together until you get to the team leads? And then that's the same internally. You decompose like that and you've got the recipe for success. And most people want that. But it's not easy because it's hard. It really is hard to do.
It's not intuitive. Well, it doesn't, I don't know. I think it should be intuitive, but it doesn't feel like, I mean, it's not how we're trained. It's not what we've experienced when we were growing up in business.
It's how we train. It's not how we parent. And all this stuff I've taught is not talked about. It's not taught in management training. How do we expect people to know this? In the same way that all the stuff is not taught to parents either. So you have a screaming baby, you know it's upset. You know something's not working, right? So you pick it up. Does it need changing? Does it need a bottle? Does it need soup?
You just kind of go down the list.
And then you get to the bottom and it's still crying. These things aren't methodical. You have to be able to empathize and understand what they're asking for. The most interesting thing with this is that our teams aren't babies. We can ask them what they want. We just rarely do. And usually we've not trained our teams to be able to answer and know what to ask for in the first place. No different to when you're overwhelmed, stressed, and someone says, so what do you want for dinner tonight? You're like, this is the last thing I want. You don't know to say the words, I can't make the decision. I'm out of the ability to make a decision. All you've got is, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? And your answer is not, no, I don't want this. It's like, no, I don't want to know. Being able to be seen in that relationship theory fits wonderfully. You've got the dishwasher. Your partner says, well, why have you emptied the dishwasher? I don't want, well, why don't you want to empty the dishwasher? And you're utterly confused by the question. Why would I want to empty the dishwasher? It's because it's not about the dishes. It's about this feeling about imbalance, that there's a chore around the house that has to be done, that seems to be defaulting as it's owned by someone else and it's not, it's ours. I feel like this relationship is not equal and that I'm mothering you. What the hell? That's not what's said. What's said is, can you not empty the dishwasher, please? And can you just do that? Until we dig a bit deeper and we understand about those dynamics. And people don't do that naturally. It's one of the things that why therapy works so well, and it's why coaching works so well. Because they challenge you to find the answer you already know, but you're not sitting there trying to answer it. It's really obvious, and it has really simple answers. But the work, we talk about in therapy of doing the work. You have to do the work. And you have to build teams, and you have to lead teams. And this is where this is that doing it when it's hard thing, right? That wolf against your neck, when it costs you. These are the things that you have to put effort into. And yeah, I've got story after story of having to really work on personality politics and relationships inside of organizations and different styles of working to really drive to a point where everyone can be not just seen, but also heard and supported. And yeah, it's all worth it, but it's really hard to get there.
Yeah. So let's give our listeners today something that they can go away with, something that they can do this afternoon or tomorrow, something very, very practical. What's one thing that you think tech leaders should do just tomorrow to promote team flourishing?
So stop worrying so much about what doesn't work. Just take some time and have a look about what is working and then try and figure out why. If you can figure out why it does, that change in perspective is often enlightening, and that will often tell you, well, here's a thing that I can change. It'll give you an idea and an understanding. Follow the 5 whys and just keep digging. Well, why? Why isn't that working? Or why did that work? Why did it do this? Because quite often, what unites us is a lot greater than what divides us. And it's really easy to get hung up on the small bits that aren't working to forget why what is working does.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Thank you for that. So, Dan, how can people contact you, get closer to you?
I have a unique name. Type me into LinkedIn. I'm sure you'll hit me.
Oh, and we'll put your link in the show notes so that people can just click right over. But yeah, you are very easy to find. But Dan, this has been great. I think we have a few more conversations in us, don't you think? We might be able to pull out a few more topics.
I would very much happily chat for as long as you like.
Okay. Well,
very much.
Definitely another day. And I think we've probably got, I don't know, maybe even 50. I feel like we got 50 topics in here. But we definitely have a lot to talk about. We'll have to geek out again about Commodore 64 too.
Indeed. I'm going to be doing a talk with Sam Basak at DevOps UK called Select Happiness from Life. So if you're wanting to see a 45-minute version of my theory on happiness and Sam's practical advice on how to be happy every day, regardless of what's going on, yeah, check that out too.
Okay, and if there's a link, then send it to me. I'll put it in the show notes, and we'll make sure that everybody knows about it.
It's going to be delivered in May, and so by the end of May, I'll have a YouTube link for you to add.
All right, sounds great. Well, hey, everybody, this has been such a great episode. Dan, thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time.
This has been another episode of the Team Amplifier podcast. Thanks for joining us. Now, get out there and be a team amplifier.